Okay, picture this. What if there was an incredible, powerful energy coiled up inside you right now? An ancient force that traditions say holds the key to unlocking profound potential and transformation.
It's a concept that really resonates, doesn't it? Across many spiritual paths, this idea of a dormant power within. And today we're undertaking a deep dive into one specific, very detailed understanding of this force. We're drawing directly from excerpts of the source material, Kundalini Energy, Awakening the Sacred Serpent Power.
That's right. Our journey today is focused entirely on unpacking the concept of Kundalini energy as it's presented in this specific text, which draws heavily on traditional yogic and tantric wisdom.
And our mission in this deep dive is clear: to explore precisely what Kundalini is according to these traditional perspectives, understand its ancient origins, delve into what these practices describe as happening when this energy awakens, and crucially, examine the deep wisdom and also the very real warnings associated with engaging with this potent force.
Yeah, getting straight to the heart of it.
Exactly. We're guided solely by the insights provided in the source material itself.
And why should you care about this, listening right now? Because according to these traditions outlined in the source, this isn't just historical lore or, abstract philosophy.
No, not at all.
It's presented as being about the fundamental potential for radical transformative change that resides dormant within every single human being. It's a path to understanding consciousness itself at its most profound, dynamic level.
Precisely. It offers a completely different, you could say, a powerful framework for understanding not just spiritual growth, but the inherent capabilities and nature of human consciousness itself. It suggests that the extraordinary isn't some distant possibility, but an energy already present within, just waiting for the conditions to unfold.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. The source material uses this really vivid image, the Sacred Serpent Power. What is Kundalini at its most basic definition, according to this text?
Well, fundamentally, the source defines Kundalini as a dormant spiritual energy. And that imagery of the coiled serpent, it's absolutely central to its description. It's said to be coiled up and resting, usually in a state of sleep or potentiality.
And where is this coiled serpent located? Is there a specific spot?
Yes, its specific location, as described, is at the very base of the spine. This corresponds to the energetic center known in these traditions as the Muladhara chakra.
The Muladhara, often called the root center.
That's the one, the root center. So when we hear about this coiled energy, the traditional location they're pointing to in the subtle or energetic body is right there at the very foundation of our being.
Okay.
And the source really emphasizes, this is important, that this is not merely a poetic symbol or just a metaphor. It's described as a real and dynamic force of divine consciousness.
A real force?
Yes. It's seen as the potential energy counterpart to the consciousness that is active and perceived in our everyday lives. It's considered latent within every human being, holding immense power and waiting for the right conditions, practices, and, well, what the source often calls grace, to stir and awaken.
The name itself, Kundalini, has a specific meaning, doesn't it? Where does that term originate?
It does. The word Kundalini comes from the Sanskrit word kundal, which directly translates to coiled or circular.
Ah, so the name itself reflects that image.
Perfectly. It refers to that state of being coiled, the serpentine potential at the base.
But you mentioned it's more than just that initial coiled state. The source stresses it's not just symbolism. What is the deeper significance attached to Kundalini then?
Right. That's a crucial distinction the source makes repeatedly. While the coiled serpent is the form it rests in, its significance goes far, far beyond that visual. Kundalini is presented as embodying the very evolutionary potential of the soul.
The evolutionary potential.
Exactly. It's described as the latent Shakti, the universal cosmic creative power. In the context of the individual, this means it is the unmanifest power within us that, when awakened, isn't just felt as energy, It initiates a profound, irreversible, alchemical transformation of human consciousness.
Oh, chemical transformation.
A fundamental shift in one's entire being. It suggests a deeply real and dynamic internal process is meant to begin.
That phrase, alchemical transformation, really paints a picture, like changing something base into something higher, right? And you mentioned Shakti, linking Kundalini to the divine feminine energy. What is that connection all about?
This is where the concept really expands, moving from the individual out to the cosmic level. Kundalini is explained not just as a personal energy, but as the individualized manifestation of the cosmic feminine principle.
Which is known as Shakti.
Known in tantric philosophy as Shakti, yes. Shakti represents the dynamic, active, creative aspect of the divine. It's the originating force behind all manifestation in the universe, the energy that literally creates worlds.
Okay, so Shakti is this huge universal creative energy. And Kundalini is that same energy, but kind of contained, individualized, and waiting inside each person.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. You could say Shakti is the entire ocean of creative power, and Kundalini is a powerful wave of that ocean coiled up within you, holding the potential of the whole.
And the source material brings in another concept here, Shiva, alongside Shakti. What's the dynamic between Shiva and Shakti in this tradition, both, cosmically and within us?
Right. In tantric tradition, the entire cosmos is understood as a divine play, like a dance or interaction between Shiva and Shakti. Shiva represents pure, formless consciousness, the static, the witnessing principle.
Okay, the awareness aspect.
Yes. And Shakti is the dynamic energy, the power that gives form and movement to Shiva's consciousness.
So like consciousness is the space, maybe, and energy is what fills and shapes things within that space.
That's one way to think about it, yeah. And this cosmic polarity, this dance, is mirrored within the human being. Within us, Kundalini, our individual portion of Shakti, is said to seek reunion with Shiva consciousness.
And where is that Shiva consciousness located within the body, according to these texts? Is there a specific place for that, too?
The source places Shiva consciousness at the very crown of the head. This corresponds to the Sahasrara chakra, often called the thousand-petaled lotus.
The crown chakra.
Exactly. So the journey of Kundalini is depicted as this powerful energy rising from the base of the spine all the way up to meet and merge with the pure consciousness at the crown.
Wow. So this process isn't just about feeling energy moving around. It's framed as a deeply spiritual journey, almost like a cosmic dance of reunion happening inside the human body.
That's exactly how it's presented. It's seen as the soul's journey towards its ultimate fulfillment, its destiny, which is the recognition of its true nature as divine consciousness, inherently one with Shiva. And as Kundalini awakens and rises, the source describes its passage through the Sushumna nadi, that's the central energy channel within the spine. Along this path, it moves through the various energy centers, the chakras.
Or the chakras.
And in doing so, it progressively purifies and illuminates each level of being associated with those centers.
Purifies and illuminates each level. What does that actually mean in terms of experience or outcome? Like what changes?
Well, according to the source, this rising process leads to really profound states of being. It results in expanded awareness far beyond the ordinary limitations of the mind. It culminates in intense spiritual bliss, which is known as Ananda.
Ananda bliss.
Yes. And ultimately, the goal is liberation, or moksha, a state of freedom and enlightenment achieved through this union. It's a process of unfolding latent spiritual capacities and dissolving the veils, the limitations that obscure our true nature.
It sounds like peeling away layers, almost. Layers of limitation. Now, this idea isn't something new, right? The source mentions that these concepts are drawn from classical texts, ancient traditions. What kind of insights and maybe roadmaps do these foundational scriptures provide?
You're absolutely right. These ideas are deeply rooted in centuries-old wisdom traditions. The source points to classical yogic and tantric texts that really serve as the original roadmaps, detailing the theory, the practices, the effects of Kundalini awakening. They offer a deep traditional understanding.
Let's look at some of those texts specifically mentioned. The first one is the Haṭha Yoga Pradīpikā. What does that text, as referenced in the source, tell us about Kundalini's role?
Okay, the Haṭha Yoga Pradīpikā. It's cited as describing Kundalini as a powerful force, often symbolized as a goddess, actually. It says that when awakened, this energy has the power to pierce through specific energetic blockages known as granthis.
Danthus. Like knots.
Exactly. The source describes these as 3 psychic knots located along that central channel, the Sushumna nadi. These knots are said to represent deep-seated limitations or attachments. The text also highlights that Kundalini's rising illuminates the Sushumna nadi itself, transforming it into a clear, vibrant pathway for spiritual energy. So this text provides specific, almost anatomical, energetic details within the tradition's understanding of the subtle body.
So it outlines the internal obstacles, these psychic knots, and also the path the energy carves out.
Precisely. It provides a kind of map of the energetic landscape within, including its challenges and the primary channel for transformation.
Okay. And the Shiva Samhita. What specific perspective is highlighted from that text in the source material?
The Shiva Samhita is presented as portraying Kundalini as a divine power that holds immense potential for both worldly experience and ultimate spiritual realization.
Both worldly enjoyment and liberation. That's fascinating. It's not just about asceticism or leaving the world behind then.
That's the interpretation drawn from this text in the source, yes. It suggests that this powerful energy can elevate all aspects of life if handled correctly. But crucially, the source emphasizes that this text strongly stresses the vital importance of thorough preparation and seeking proper guidance before attempting to awaken or utilize this energy. That warning comes through very strongly.
Okay, so that duality is there, but the caution is equally strong. Makes sense. And the Tantra Shastra tradition seems to be a central pillar for the source's understanding. What's the core perspective on Kundalini from Tantra?
Right. The Tantra Shastra tradition, as described in the source, considers Kundalini not just an important element, but the very essence of spiritual practice.
The essence itself.
Yes. It views Kundalini as the fundamental divine power residing within the human form, and the awakening process as the core method for realizing ultimate reality. The tantric approach, according to the source, is characterized by reverence, deep understanding of the energy's nature, and a principle of surrender.
Surrender, not forcing it.
Absolutely. The source is very clear on this point within the tantric framework. It's about honoring a sacred living power within. And this tradition, perhaps more than any other mention, consistently emphasizes profound caution and respect.
Caution and respect.
Yes, Tantra recognizes Kundalini as a sacred fire. It's a powerful metaphor suggesting its immense purifying power, but also its capacity to cause serious disruption or harm if approached with ignorance, force, or without proper preparation. This deep sense of potential danger is a repeated theme the source draws from Tantra.
That fire metaphor is very potent. You have to handle fire carefully.
Yeah.
It makes sense that such power demands great respect and preparation. The source calls this entire process of awakening an alchemical process. What is that term, alchemy, signify in this spiritual context? It sounds like a fundamental transformation, turning something ordinary into something extraordinary.
That's precisely the idea. The alchemical metaphor is used because it points to a fundamental, transformative restructuring of the practitioner's entire being, physical, mental, energetic, and spiritual. It's not merely about experiencing some fleeting energy sensations or, altered states.
Not just feelings.
No, it's about a deep, often challenging process that changes the very stuff of your consciousness and being from its dense, ego-bound state into a more refined, enlightened state. A total inner overhaul, you could say.
A fundamental change in composition.
Okay.
What are the specific key aspects of this alchemical process that the source details? What actually happens?
The source highlights several interconnected aspects of this transformation. First, there's the purification of the nadis.
Ah, the energy channels again.
Exactly. As the Kundalini awakens and begins to move upwards, the source describes it as actively purifying this network of subtle energy channels, the nadis, which are said to permeate the entire body. This purification process is crucial. It's described as clearing away blockages, impurities, and resistances that have built up over a lifetime, often stemming from past actions, emotional residue, trauma, or simply unconscious living.
So it's like clearing out pipes to allow the energy to flow freely, making space.
That's a good analogy, making the system capable of handling the increased flow. Second, there's the activation of higher faculties. As the rising energy passes through the chakras, which are seen as centers of consciousness and energetic function, the source states that dormant aspects of human potential begin to awaken.
Like what kind of potential?
This includes enhanced perception, profound intuition, and spiritual insight. And the Source emphasizes that these aren't abilities you try to develop. They unfold naturally as the energy purifies and activates these centers. They are consequences of the energy's movement, not objectives to pursue directly.
That distinction is interesting, spontaneous unfolding versus conscious development. What's the third aspect?
Third, and this is described as perhaps the most significant transformation, is the dissolution of ego identification.
Okay, the ego.
The process of Kundalini rising is said to gradually loosen and ultimately dissolve the rigid identification of consciousness with the limited, separate ego, that sense of I, tied solely to the physical body, personal history, thoughts, and emotions. The Source describes this as a profound letting go, moving beyond the small self.
Dissolving the ego.
Yeah.
That sounds like a huge, potentially challenging shift in identity. What replaces that identification?
Well, the Source states that this process reveals the practitioner's true nature as eternal, unconditioned consciousness itself, something vast and boundless, not confined to the individual form. It's a radical shift in self-perception from being a separate entity to recognizing oneself as pure awareness. This aspect can definitely be intense, as the ego naturally resists its dissolution.
I can imagine. And the fourth aspect of this alchemy?
The fourth is the integration of opposites. The rising Kundalini is often described as harmonizing and uniting dualistic principles within the human being, such as the masculine and feminine energies, the active and receptive forces. This leads to a state of profound inner wholeness, balance, and unity, resolving internal conflicts and bringing about a sense of completeness.
So it's a process that not only clears the path and activates potential, but fundamentally changes who you perceive yourself to be and integrates different aspects of your being. Sounds incredibly thorough.
According to the Source, yes. It's an intense, layered process affecting multiple dimensions of the human system, all contributing to a single profound transformation.
This level of transformation brings up a really important point the Source emphasizes, distinguishing between authentic Kundalini awakening and simply experiencing intense energetic phenomena. Why is making this distinction so crucial for anyone exploring this topic?
Oh, it is absolutely vital because, as the source material points out, the process can sometimes involve dramatic physical sensations, involuntary movements known as kriyas, visions, intense heat or light, or powerful energy flows.
Right, the phenomena.
Exactly. Many people might experience these and mistake them for the full, authentic awakening of Kundalini. However, the source clearly differentiates these potentially transient experiences from the lasting, fundamental transformation that characterizes true awakening. True awakening, it insists, is marked by enduring change.
So the phenomena aren't necessarily the goal or the sign of arrival. They can happen, but they aren't it.
Precisely. They can be part of the process for some people, certainly, but they are not the definition of authentic awakening itself. The source provides clear hallmarks of what genuine awakening looks like beyond just those sensations.
Okay, so what are those key characteristics of authentic awakening, according to the source? How does one discern the real transformation?
The source outlines 4 primary characteristics that define authentic Kundalini awakening. First, sustained transformation. This is perhaps the most important. True awakening produces deep, lasting changes in one's state of consciousness, perception of reality, and fundamental character. These aren't temporary altered states or fleeting moments of insight. They are permanent shifts that redefine who you are and how you live.
So it's a new, enduring reality, not just a temporary peak experience, a fundamental rewiring.
Precisely. A fundamental rewiring is a good way to put it. Second, inner purification. Genuine awakening is consistently accompanied by a natural, spontaneous purification of thoughts, emotions, and desires. It leads to a significant increase in what are called sattvic qualities, things like harmony, clarity, peace, kindness.
Sattvic.
Harmonious. Yes, harmonious, pure. This isn't forced self-improvement. It's a spontaneous clearing of negativity and unconscious patterns as the energy rises and purifies the system. It directly links the energetic process to ethical and emotional refinement. The energy itself cleanses the inner landscape, dissolving the roots of negative states.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the third?
Third, spontaneous wisdom. Authentic awakening often unlocks an inner fount of spontaneous insights into spiritual truths. This is a form of direct knowing, or gnosis, that bypasses intellectual understanding. It feels like universal truths revealing themselves directly from within, not learned from outside sources.
Like knowledge emerging directly from consciousness itself. An intuitive leap.
That's the implication, yes. A profound intuitive understanding. Fourth, compassion and humility. A genuine, unmistakable outcome of true awakening is the arising of profound, unconditional compassion for all beings and a deep, abiding humility.
Compassion and humility. That challenges some popular ideas about spiritual power, doesn't it?
It really does. Recognizing the interconnectedness of all life, which is often cultivated through this process, naturally dissolves the separateness that breeds self-centeredness and pride. These are seen as the true fruits of the process, far more significant than any energetic pyrotechnics.
And the source adds one more point you mentioned.
Yeah.
About the feeling.
Yes, a subtle but important nuance. It's often experienced not as a personal achievement born of intense effort, but rather as a gift of grace.
Grace.
This perspective naturally cultivates a deep sense of surrender, awe, and gratitude, rather than egoic pride in having mastered or awakened something through one's own power alone. It emphasizes the divine or cosmic element involved, fostering humility.
That idea of grace really underscores the sacredness of the process and shifts the focus from personal effort to receptive surrender. Speaking of process, how do the traditional paths prepare someone for this profound and powerful awakening? The Source refers to these practices as a sacred technology.
Yes, the term sacred technology is used because these aren't just random exercises. They are precise, systematically developed techniques specifically designed to prepare the physical body, the energetic system, and the mind for the safe and harmonious awakening and integration of Kundalini. The fundamental principle is preparing the entire vessel before attempting to unleash such potent energy.
Preparation is key. Got it. What are some of these specific practices mentioned in the source material as part of this preparation?
The source highlights several key techniques. First, pranayama, which means control of the life force, often through the breath. Specific breathing techniques like pastrika, which is like a bellows breath, Kapalbhati, sometimes called skull shining breath, and ujjayi, the victorious breath, are used.
What's their purpose?
Their purpose, according to the source, is to purify the subtle channels, balance the nervous system, and gradually awaken the dormant energies. The emphasis is on a controlled, progressive awakening, not forcing it all at once. The breath is used as a tool to purify and gently stir the energy.
Okay, gradual awakening.
Right.
What else?
Second, bandhas, often called energy locks. These involve specific muscular contractions in certain areas of the body. You have Muladhara, the root lock at the pelvic floor, Uddiyana Bandha, the abdominal lock, and Jalandhara Bandha, the throat lock.
Locks. So they hold the energy.
In a way, yes. Their purpose is described as containing, consolidating, and directing the awakened energy upwards through that central channel, the Sushumna, preventing it from dissipating or causing issues in other parts of the system. It's about intelligent management of the energy flow, keeping it on the right path.
Okay, directing the flow. Makes sense.
Then there are mudras. These are sacred gestures or positions of the body, hands, or even eyes. Their purpose is to facilitate specific energetic configurations and induce particular states of consciousness. They help to seal the energy, stimulate centers, and align the practitioner with the meditative process, almost like a physical or energetic key to unlock certain internal states.
Interesting. What about the mind?
Meditation is absolutely a cornerstone, particularly cultivating deep states of absorption or samadhi. The source states that while other practices might actively stir energy, deep meditative states more passively invite the awakening of dormant spiritual forces by creating a state of profound inner stillness and receptivity.
So meditation creates the ideal inner environment for the energy to arise spontaneously, a kind of surrender.
That's the perspective presented as a state of deep surrender, where the inherent potential can naturally blossom. Finally, mantra is mentioned, the repetition or intonation of sacred sound vibrations.
Chanting.
Yes, chanting or internal repetition. The source explains that these sounds carry specific energetic frequencies that resonate with and help to awaken and purify the subtle energy centers, the chakras, preparing them for the flow of Kundalini.
Wow, it's a comprehensive approach using breath, physical body, mind, and sound. It truly sounds like a technology for working with the inner landscape.
It is presented as a very sophisticated system developed over millennia. And a critical point the source reiterates throughout the discussion of these practices is that they're traditionally meant to be undertaken under the guidance of a qualified teacher or guru.
Guidance again.
Yes. They are part of a holistic path that also includes rigorous ethical preparation and purification of one's lifestyle. The efficacy and safety of these practices are deeply linked to the practitioner's foundation and the wisdom of their guide. That point cannot be stressed enough, according to the source.
The emphasis on guidance and preparation is definitely a consistent theme. Speaking of guides, the source includes perspectives from several well-known spiritual teachers who have spoken about Kundalini. What insights do these realized individuals offer based on this material?
Right. The source brings in the voices of several significant figures. Swami Vivekananda is presented as describing Kundalini as the coiled-up power residing within the subtle body. And he emphasized that its awakening should arise naturally as a result of dedicated, consistent spiritual practice, particularly through meditation, rather than through force or artificial means.
That reinforces the idea of natural unfolding rather than aggressive forcing.
It certainly does. Then there's Sri Aurobindo, a more modern sage. He's described as having a unique perspective on the process. He wrote about both ascending and descending forces of consciousness and energy.
Ascending and descending.
Yes. And he emphasized that the awakening of Kundalini doesn't just transform the mind and consciousness, but can also bring about a transformation of the physical body itself, right down to the cellular level as part of manifesting a divine life on Earth. This idea of cellular transformation is a distinct point attributed to him in the source.
So not just our inner state, but even our physical form being transformed. That's a really profound idea.
According to what the source shares about his teachings, yes. Then Paramahansa Yogananda, known for bringing Kriya Yoga to the West, taught that Kundalini awakening happens spontaneously and naturally when the practitioner achieves deep states of meditation and devotional surrender.
Spontaneously and naturally again.
Yes, and he too strongly stressed the necessity of genuine inner preparation and the guidance of a true guru for navigating this path safely and effectively. A recurring theme, as you noted.
Definitely. Who else is mentioned?
We also have Gopi Krishna. His personal journey is highlighted because he experienced a sudden, intense Kundalini awakening, apparently without traditional preparation. The source notes that his experience was often described as challenging, even harrowing at times.
Oh, wow.
He dedicated his later life to documenting his experience and, crucially, became a strong advocate for the absolute necessity of proper preparation, ethical living, and physical mental purity to safely handle such powerful energy. His story serves as a kind of cautionary tale within the source material.
A powerful real-life illustration of those warnings we talked about earlier.
Indeed. Finally, Ramana Maharshi. His core teaching was focused on the direct path of self-inquiry, asking, who am I?
Right, the self-inquiry path.
Yes. And while his primary method didn't explicitly involve Kundalini practices, the source states that he acknowledged the reality and significance of Kundalini as an energetic force. However, he consistently pointed practitioners back to the ultimate goal, the direct realization of one's true nature as pure, unconditioned awareness itself. His perspective subtly redirects the focus from the energetic phenomenon, perhaps, to the underlying consciousness.
It seems like even across these different paths and perspectives, there's a shared recognition of this energy, but also a very consistent emphasis on the importance of preparation, the potential risks, and the understanding that the ultimate goal is something beyond just the energetic experience itself.
That's certainly the synthesis offered by the source material. Regardless of the specific approach detailed, there seems to be a consensus on the seriousness of the undertaking and the foundational requirements for safety and authentic realization.
And that brings us directly to those sacred warnings. We've touched on them, but let's zero in. What are the explicit dangers and potential challenges the source points out if someone approaches Kundalini awakening improperly or without adequate preparation?
The source is really unambiguous on this point. It warns that attempting to force Kundalini awakening through aggressive techniques or approaching it without having laid the necessary groundwork can lead to significant challenges and even harmful consequences. It states emphatically that preparation is not optional. It is absolutely essential for safety and well-being.
Okay, essential. What exactly constitutes this essential preparation? Beyond just the practices themselves, what are the foundational requirements mentioned?
The source outlines 4 primary foundational elements required. First, ethical living. This is rooted in principles often found in yoga, such as the yamas, restraints like truthfulness, nonviolence, and niyamas, observances like contentment, self-discipline.
The ethical guidelines.
Yes. The source states that cultivating a foundation of moral integrity and ethical purity is crucial because increased spiritual energy can amplify existing tendencies. Without a pure ethical base, powerful energy could manifest as ego inflation, harmful actions, or intensified negative traits. You need to purify your character before you amplify your energy, essentially. Build a clean container.
Makes sense.
What's next? Second, nervous system stability. The source emphasizes that the physical and energetic nervous system must be strong and balanced to handle the immense power of rising Kundalini. This is developed through appropriate physical yoga practices, asanas, diet, and a healthy lifestyle. A weak or unstable nervous system can be overwhelmed, leading to physical tremors, pain, or erratic energy flow. It's about creating a robust channel, making sure the physical body is strong enough to integrate the energy.
Right, the vehicle needs to be sound.
Exactly. Third, emotional maturity. The process of Kundalini can stir up deep-seated emotional blockages, past traumas, and unconscious psychological material. The source stresses that the practitioner needs the capacity to remain centered, observe these intense emotional states without being consumed by them, and process them constructively.
So you need psychological resilience.
Precisely. Lack of emotional maturity can lead to severe emotional instability, anxiety, depression, or uncontrolled outbursts. You need to be able to witness and process, not be overwhelmed. And fourth, guru guidance.
There it is again.
Consistently highlighted. The blessing and guidance of a realized or experienced teacher is presented as paramount. An authentic guru, according to the tradition, possesses the wisdom to recognize the signs of genuine awakening, understand the specific needs and challenges of the individual practitioner, provide corrective guidance when things go awry, and offer protection and support on this intense path. They serve as an essential navigator.
Okay, those 4 foundations are clear. Ethical living, stable nervous system, emotional maturity, and guru guidance. So what are the specific risks or negative outcomes that the source warns can occur if someone bypasses these foundational steps and tries to force things?
Well, the source warns that pushing for awakening without proper preparation can manifest in various challenging ways. This includes physical imbalances, things like intense and uncontrolled bodily movements, the kriyas we mentioned, or persistent heat, burning sensations, chronic pain, even digestive issues.
Physical problems.
Yes, and it can lead to significant emotional instability, including extreme mood swings, intense fear, pervasive anxiety, or deep depression. Furthermore, it can result in mental disturbances, such as disorientation, confusion, intrusive thoughts, or even states resembling psychosis.
Wow, it's serious.
It is presented very seriously, and the source has a specific term for this constellation of potential issues, doesn't it?
Yes. It mentions that these challenging states and disturbances resulting from improperly managed Kundalini energy are sometimes referred to in traditional or modern contexts as Kundalini syndrome. Kundalini syndrome.
Using that term within the source indicates that these potential negative outcomes are a recognized phenomenon associated with mishandling this powerful energy. It really paints a clear picture of why the warnings are so serious and why the preparation is presented as absolutely paramount. It's not just a theoretical risk.
Understood. Okay, let's circle back now to that beautiful idea of the divine feminine within. The source states clearly that Kundalini is not some external power you need to acquire or bring in from outside.
That is a fundamental understanding presented in the source material, yes. Kundalini is not something external to be chased or imported. It is described as the sacred divine feminine energy, our own personal Shakti, already residing within us.
Already there?
Already there. It is our inherent potential, coiled and waiting within each individual being, patiently waiting to be recognized, honored, and allowed to unfold.
And how does this recognition or awakening of this inner potential typically begin, according to the source? Is it always a sudden, dramatic event like Gopi Krishna's?
Not at all, apparently. While spontaneous or dramatic awakenings can occur, the source suggests that the conscious path often begins much more subtly. It frequently starts not with intense energetic experiences, but with a growing sense of reverence for the spiritual dimension of existence, a deepening commitment to inner purification, the ethical and emotional work we discussed, and a willingness to surrender the ego's agenda.
So it's often a shift in attitude and commitment first.
It seems so. A shift in the inner landscape and priorities, creating the right inner environment and intention. This ties back to the point that authentic awakening is more about lasting inner transformation than sensational phenomena.
Right. And when Kundalini is awakened consciously through this path of preparation, reverence, and surrender the source describes, what are the outcomes? What happens when this inner potential is truly recognized and unfolds properly?
When the process unfolds consciously, with humility, devotion, and proper guidance, the source states that it opens the path not merely to potential mystical experiences, which, again, are not the goal and may or may not manifest.
Right, not the goal.
But, more importantly, to complete inner integration and ultimately to God realization or self-realization.
Complete inner integration and God realization. Those are immense outcomes.
They are presented as the pinnacle, yes. The source describes how this process transforms the practitioner from within at the deepest possible level. It doesn't just change how they feel, it changes their fundamental relationship with reality itself. It reveals the sacred nature that underlies ordinary existence and allows them to perceive the divine presence that permeates all phenomena.
So seeing the sacred in everything.
In every moment, in every person, in everything. The world doesn't necessarily look different, but the way they experience and relate to it is radically transformed.
Which leads us then to what the source describes as the ultimate goal of this entire process. It's clear, as you said, that the aim isn't just acquiring powers or having extraordinary experiences.
Absolutely. The source is very firm on this point. While psychic powers, known as siddhis, may naturally arise as the energy activates different centers, pursuing or becoming attached to these powers is explicitly warned against. They are seen as potential distractions, hindrances, or even traps on the true path.
Okay, so it's not powers or experiences. What is the real ultimate goal of Kundalini awakening, according to this source material?
The highest aim, the culmination of the journey, is described as the realization of the fundamental oneness of all existence.
Oneness. Unity.
Yes, it's the dissolution of the illusion of separateness. The source describes it using terms like the merger of the individual soul, Eva, with the cosmic soul, paramount man, or supreme consciousness, the small, separate self merging with the boundless, universal self.
And what is that state of realization, that unity consciousness, like as described in the source? What does it feel like or entail?
Well, in this state, the apparent division between the individual self and the rest of the cosmos completely dissolves. There is a direct experiential knowing that everything is interconnected and that one's own consciousness is ultimately identical with the universal consciousness. The understanding and direct experience that the individual self was never truly separate from the divine or the totality of consciousness in the first place. The separateness was just a product of limited perception.
And Kundalini's role in reaching that?
The source describes the awakened Kundalini energy as serving as the sacred bridge or the dynamic force that carries consciousness from the illusion of limitation and separateness to this recognition of its infinite, boundless nature. It's the means by which that ultimate realization of unity occurs.
Okay. And crucially, the source emphasizes that this state of realization is not an escape from the world or life, right?
No, not at all. It's a transformation of your relationship to existence itself while still fully participating in it.
How does that actually change the way a realized being lives or interacts with the world day to day?
The source explains that the realized being sees and experiences the same fundamental divine consciousness in all forms, in other people, in nature, in challenging circumstances, in every single moment. They live with a constant awareness of this sacred presence underlying everything.
And that awareness translates into action.
Naturally, yes. This state of unity consciousness expresses itself outwardly through qualities like spontaneous wisdom, effortless compassion for all beings, and unconditional love. These aren't traits they have to strive to exhibit. They are simply the natural outflow of recognizing the interconnectedness and divine nature of everything.
That's profound. It connects the highest spiritual concept, unity, back to the most fundamental aspects of human interaction and experience, love and compassion.
It really does. It illustrates how this ancient, intricate system of energy transformation ultimately leads to a state of being characterized by the most universal and essential qualities, experienced from a place of deep realization rather than intellectual concept or effort.
So, stepping back and looking at this entire deep dive through the source material, wow, it truly describes a profound path presented as one of humanity's most incredible spiritual possibilities, a way to consciously participate in our own evolutionary unfolding.
It is indeed presented as such. And the source makes it crystal clear that while the potential for transformation is immense, it demands everything from the practitioner: unwavering commitment to truth, sincere inner purification, ethical living, and importantly, the humility and surrender to recognize that such a monumental awakening is ultimately a gift of divine grace, not a personal conquest achieved solely through effort.
Right. The ancient wisdom seems to tell us that this sacred serpent power is not a force to be dominated or controlled, but a sacred energy be honored, served through preparation, and ultimately surrendered to.
Exactly. Allowing it, with reverence and guidance, to carry us through this alchemical process, leading us home to our true nature, described in these traditions as eternal, boundless, blissful consciousness.
And the source concludes with this incredibly beautiful, almost poetic perspective, calling the entire journey of Kundalini awakening the journey of love.
It does. It describes the process as a love affair between the individual soul, our inner consciousness, and the infinite divine, a sacred, intimate romance that unfolds within the very structure of the human body and consciousness.
And in the culmination of this divine romance, the seeker and the sought are revealed to be one and the same.
Yes. And the energy that was once perceived as coiled and dormant at the base of the spine, which then rose and transformed, is ultimately recognized as the very same fundamental love and creative power that permeates the entire cosmos.
The love that moves the sun and the stars.
Experienced intimately within. That's the final reveal, according to the source.
So consider this as we wrap up this deep dive, drawing from these profound ancient sources. If this incredibly potent ancient energy described as residing within you is, at its core, the same fundamental love and creative force that powers the entire universe, what does that mean for the love and connection you experience, give, and receive in your own everyday life?
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? This perspective invites us to bridge the micro and the macro to see the vast cosmic reality mirrored in our own inner being, and perhaps to recognize that the energy described in these ancient texts might be speaking to a universal force expressed uniquely within each of us.
We've covered a vast territory today, following the path from the base of the spine all the way to the cosmic union described in these texts. Hopefully, this deep dive, guided purely by the source material, has given you a much clearer, more detailed picture of what Kundalini energy represents in these traditional wisdom traditions. Its incredible potential, the intensity of its process, the deep respect and rigorous preparation it demands, and its ultimate goal of realizing fundamental unity.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.